I want to hear cannons. Three-step drop, goes on the end zone. Caught ball, touchdown Tampa Bay. Mike Evans reaches up with one hand and grabs it in.
It's first and goal. That's picked off. That's picked off. And who else? Rondé Barber. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers may ride to the Super Bowl with that one.
We don't even keep score. We just run that up and leave.
Third down, 18. Dropping Gannon, looking Gannon. Throws up in the head. Intercepted at the 40. Derek Brooks 30. Brooks to the 25. 20. Derek Brooks all the way. There it is. The dagger's in. We're going to win the Super Bowl.
This is Mike Allstott, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and you're listening to the Cannon Fire Podcast.
And there the cannons go. Fire them. Keep on firing them. Keep on firing them.
(16-13) your final score from Raymond James Stadium as the Atlanta Falcons will take the win over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with a last-minute field goal on the leg of Younghoe Koo. The Bucs will take their third loss of the season, and the Falcons now have sole possession of the NFC South for at least the next couple of weeks or so. Man, oh man. That game filled me with all kind of emotions, and I'm not really sure if I can break all of them down over the next hour or so, but luckily I do have some help. Welcome back to the Cannon Fire Podcast. I am your host, Rhett Matthew, joined alongside me, as always, my good buddy and co-host from BucsNation.com, Evan Wanish, and today we are going to try and make sense of one of the sloppiest football games I have watched in quite some time. Incredibly frustrating performance by Tampa Bay out there today, to say the very least.
Yeah, I mean, a game that really the entire time was right there for them. Was never really out of reach. Obviously, the Falcons had a chance to put it out of reach, and the Falcons didn't play great either because with how poorly the Bucs played, as far as penalties and even on defense, they weren't as sharp as they normally are. The Falcons had 3 fumbles inside the red zone, basically on the 1-yard line almost. So the Falcons could have really ran away with this one. So actually the 16-13 score is actually kind of deceiving because to me, I think the Falcons should have won by more, but the Falcons struggled in their own right. So obviously a game, though, that with all that being said, with all the mistakes by the defense, mistakes by the offense, miscues by the offense, the penalties, with all that being said, the Bucs still had a shot. They still had a chance to win. Basically had 2 chances to either tie or take the lead. Were 1 for 2 on those chances, ended up tying the game, and just simply not good enough. Simply, not good enough. And now you're in a tough spot. You're no longer in first place in the NFC South. You're 3-3, 500 for the first time all season. And now you got a short week coming up. So things don't get any easier. But you got to hope to sort of move on from this one. You can't let this linger because if you do, then next thing you know, you'll be out of it completely. So can't. It's a bad taste in your mouth. It's going to leave a bad taste, but you got to sort of wipe it off and get back to work.
Discipline, one of the several things that went wrong for the Bucs today. 9 penalties for 66 yards and 9 penalties also against Atlanta. So it wasn't just a poor discipline day for Tampa Bay. The refs were pretty active in this one, throwing a lot of flags for both teams here. But regardless, it set the Bucs back countless times today. I mean, more times than you can count, thinking of big plays taken away because of a holding, or, you get the ball back on offense and you're pinned deep inside your own territory just to be backed up even further to the goal line because of a false start on one of your offensive linemen. The number of false start penalties today, I got to tell you, I didn't think week 7 was going to be the week that we saw just an offensive meltdown as far as false start penalties go, everybody not being on the same page, the lack of communication, whatever it may have been, the lack of preparation. It was more sloppy football. And going back to what has lost the Buccaneers games for over 40 years now, shooting yourself in the foot. The Bucs did that more times than I can count today. So far, their worst performance of the season as far as just pre-snap penalties go.
Yeah, no, for sure. And yeah, you're not really giving yourself a shot. And the offense struggled in its own right, but it's going to struggle even more when you're backing yourself up. So I think there was a period where I think they had 3 straight penalties that were called on the team. So it turned a 2nd and 5 into a 2nd and 19, and the Bucs ended up having to punt. So yeah, just, and yeah, like you said, the Falcons had some penalties too. Really sloppy game on both sides. I think the officiating was but like, you complain about the officials all you want. Like 9 penalties is 9 penalties, still too much. They've done a pretty decent job this season of limiting those penalties and not having it really hurt them as much. But there was on more than one occasion today was sort of the not really the back-breaking, like game deciding penalty, right? Like there wasn't like anything like that, but you put 9 penalties up, they're going to stack up, and it all adds up. So, just simply, not good enough. And now you're looking at an offense that has scored 1 touchdown in their last 8 quarters. And now I think you can start to question, Baker Mayfield, start to question this offense now. And they had a nice start, but I mean, coming off of the bye week, only scoring 1 touchdown in your last 8 quarters just is not going to get the job done against anybody in this league. I don't really care who you're playing. So, they just, like I said, the penalties, it's uncharacteristic for them for this year. I know people are going to say, well, the Bucs have always struggled with penalties. Yeah, but like, for this year, they've been pretty decent at it. They've been pretty decent at limiting them, not having it hurt them so much. But today, just for some reason, today it was just too sloppy. And like you said, the amount of even pre-snap penalties, like not even like in play during the snap penalties. I think Matt Filer got called for 2 false starts. There's an illegal shift on Trey Palmer. I think there was a illegal shift on Raheem Jarrett. So there's 4 right there, pre-snap penalties, and just simply cannot happen. So sloppy, just really, really sloppy and undisciplined.
Yeah, it was the most week 1 performance we have seen this team look all year. Right? I mean, again, this is unacceptable at any point in the season, but in week 1, you can at least justify it a little bit by saying, hey, these guys are shaking off of the rust. You're getting back into the swing of things. We've seen this happen before where teams do seem to struggle with disciplined penalties at the beginning of the year, but today was just simply unacceptable, especially week 7 in the season. 328 total yards of offense for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Sorry, I can't even say that without wanting to throw up. 328 total yards of offense for Tampa Bay. 255 of those came through the air. Before we talk about the lack of offense, which is going to be a hot topic for the rest of the week, let's talk about Baker Mayfield, the quarterback, and his performance today. 27 for 42, 274 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. This is the most we have seen Baker Mayfield sit in the pocket and throw for the Bucs. Obviously, the run game for another week in a row was not going to be an option for them. And as close as this game was, it felt like the only juice you were going to get on the offense was when they started to target 13 and 14, throw the ball downfield, and that's if the big play wasn't called back from a penalty as well. So talking about Baker Mayfield's day, less than 5 minutes left to go. Bucs are driving down 3, have a chance in the red zone to end up with 6 points and potentially take a late lead. Baker throws a pick. Against better football teams, the Bucs do not get the football back. Okay, the Falcons go out, they lay an egg on offense, and the Bucs, they get another shot at it. They make their way down the field. And this second chance, redemption on the table for the Bucs, we don't get much of anything. We can call it bad play from Baker. We can call it a bad game plan from Dave Canales. We can call it bad blocking from the offensive line. Atlanta's defense making the play in the right moment. Regardless, they didn't get the job done. But Baker, I mean, I hate to say it, doesn't get a shot at the end of the game against better teams. So let's just assume that interception is the last throw that he had in this game, because it may as well have been. Other than that, what did you think of his game today?
A typical Baker Mayfield game. Like, this is the type of guy that we saw in Cleveland and we saw with Carolina, and you saw a little bit with the Rams. Like, he'll make some plays, but at the same time, like, there's going to be those plays where you're like, what is going on? Like, that interception, like, okay, you misfired, but Kate Otton's not even open. Like Otton is not even open. He is covered, and you still decide to throw the ball. The Bucs had a chance to tie or take the lead there, and you get nothing. So just can't happen. You can't make that throw. You simply cannot make that throw. He missed Godwin earlier on a play. He missed Godwin again on a deep ball. I didn't think the inaccuracy was too like crazy. Like, I didn't think he was like crazy inaccurate. Just He's still indecisive with his decision making. Sometimes he holds on to the ball too much. I think there's basically like 2 coverage sacks where he just like, get rid of the ball, man. Made some plays with his legs, extended some plays, but just, simply not good enough. And now, like I said, it's back-to-back weeks where like Baker Mayfield hasn't been that good. And you're right, like against a better football team, like they're not getting that ball back. Like against the better, like if Cordero Patterson gets 1 more yard, they're not getting that football back. So yeah, like Baker Mayfield could very well have costed them the game there, and there'd be 10 times more heat on Mayfield than there is right now. But I do think that like that's the type of play, right? That throw that he made that was picked off, that's the type of play that ends up getting Kyle Trask in the game. Like that's the type of plays that the Bucs don't want to see, right? And when you lose football games because of Baker Mayfield, that's where you're thinking of, okay, maybe they have to make a switch. That can't happen. If you're Baker Mayfield, it just can't happen. So a huge opportunity for Mayfield on Thursday night is this offense goes out there, lays another clunker, and Mayfield plays like he did today or last week. I don't know for sure. Like, I don't know if they're going to bench him, but like that'd be 3 straight losses, under 500, and your quarterback seemingly getting worse and worse by the week. So just again, made some plays, had a nice ball to Mike Evans for the touchdown, made some more plays to Mike Evans, obviously had the nice 31-yard run on 3rd and 9 to keep that, alive, or else they don't tie it at all. Made some plays at the end of the day, though. He makes a play that costs you the game or a decent chance at the game. And that's been the book on Baker Mayfield so far in his career. So we'll see if he can bounce back from this. And the worry is that he's been inconsistent. But the one thing that has been consistent is when he starts to play bad, it's not just 1 week or 2 weeks. It's 2, 3, 4, 5. It's consecutive weeks. So they got to figure it out, or else we could be seeing Kyle Trask sooner rather than later.
One of the many turning points in this roller coaster of a game, on the very first drive for the Buccaneers, their first offensive possession, we saw them get aggressive. They went for it on 4th and 6, just over the 50-yard line. And I got to say, I can appreciate the aggressiveness that we saw right out of the gate, because it felt like, especially after that big 3rd and 11 conversion from Rachaad White, it felt like there was a little bit of energy in this offense. And it felt like they kind of had the ball rolling. And I'm going to be honest with you, 4th and 6, it's not going to seem like a good business decision to anybody if you do not convert, which the Bucs did not. But do you blame them? And Evan, when you saw that, do you get upset with them for not punting there? Or do you kind of agree with, they're feeling the momentum right there in that moment? They felt like they could take control early. This was the most juice we had seen from the offense in, 4 or 5 quarters at that point. So maybe they felt like they had something, but that's a big decision that ultimately gave the Falcons the ball, and they end up scoring.
Yeah, I personally, in that spot, I probably don't agree with it. Now, I do hate punting when you're in opponent territory. Like, that's just something that's always bothered me with every game I watch. I'm like, oh, man, it freaking sucks when that offense gets down there, and then you got to punt. But I personally didn't agree with the 4th and 6 call. I don't hate it. Like, I don't think it's egregious, but I probably wouldn't have done it. I would have just punted. Your defense hadn't been on the field yet. So I think, you think a defense is the strength of your team, and you're playing an offense that isn't like a world beater, So I think I would have had a little bit more faith in my defense to make the Atlanta offense go the full way, instead of getting the ball basically at the 50-yard line. But also, like, another thing about Baker, man, like, just, I don't care if it's even like picked off. Like, it's 4th down. You can't throw the ball away. Like, I hate that. When you throw the ball away on 4th down, throw it up, see what happens. Maybe you get a penalty. Maybe, the Falcons had a lot of holding penalties. There was a lot of holding penalties there. Maybe you get that penalty, maybe you get that call and it extends the drive. Mayfield, unfortunately, just threw it away. But I appreciate you trying to set the tone, right? I appreciate you trying to get the energy up, trying to, score on the first drive and put the pedal to the metal, but at the same time, felt like that was a spot where it's a little unnecessary, especially when in the past we've seen them be more conservative than not at times. So yeah, it was a little bit of a questionable thing for me.
We got a couple of callers on hold. Before we get to that, I do want to highlight the run game while we talk about this Buccaneers offense and what went wrong. As I mentioned before, just another week in a row with absolutely nothing from this run game. Rachaad White did get a little more involved today, but not by much. 13 carries for 34 yards. Now, we did have 6 catches for 65 yards, so 99 yards from scrimmage for Rachaad White. Could not hit triple digits, unfortunately, but we did get to see him get involved in the pass game this week, which was a nice change of pace. It was something that I think we've been asking for a couple of weeks now. But again, back to the run game, averaging 2.6 yards per carry on 13 carries. Baker Mayfield had the huge run at the end of the game, 3 carries for 32 yards. Keyshawn Vaughn comes in the game as the second running back, only carries the ball 4 times for 7 yards, averaging 1.8 yards a carry. Another week in a row that Keyshawn Vaughn cannot average more than 2 yards per carry.
And anytime you can get a running back that drops a wide open pass in the flat, you gotta get him in the game. So
yeah, I mean, I have alluded to it before, and I know that Sneak Vaughn is your boy. That's your favorite player. You've been riding with him since day one, clearly. But Keyshawn Vaughn, another week in a row where I'm scratching my head asking where Sean Tucker is and why he isn't at least getting an attempt to take some of these snaps away from 21, because this is not it. I mean, you go up against a run defense that was already suspect in Atlanta. Maybe they have been getting better, but this felt like it should have been a week where you got at least a little bit more out of this run game, and clearly it wasn't even enough to try and get 20 carries on the day. The Bucs gave up on that run game in the second quarter for more lack of offense.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I'm tired of talking about the run game. Like I'm sick of it. Just they're not good. They're not going to be good. Like, you can't expect this run game to do anything. Like, to do anything of substance. Like, you just can't. So if they have a good game, great, I'll play it out. But like on the previews or whatever, like I'm done talking about, well, if they can get the run game going, they're not going to. Like, it's not going to happen. So they have to be as efficient as possible in the passing game, efficient on third downs, and hope for the best, because this run game is just not going to get it done. It is a multitude of a bunch of things. It's the running backs, it's the offensive line, it's the play calling, it's all that. It's not one person. And I see a lot of people think that, we're like just blaming Baker Mayfield for the loss. We're not. We're getting into it to the defense is the fault for the loss too. This game could be going into overtime right now. We could still be playing, but no, the defense gave it up. But these running backs just, they're not it. And why you're playing Keyshawn Vaughn? We know what Keyshawn Vaughn is. Like, while I don't know how good Sean Tucker is, based on what we've seen, I don't think he's that great. I think that the preseason hype, obviously, is really going away, but I think it was just that. It was kind of hype. But at the same time, you don't know exactly what Sean Tucker is. I know what Keyshawn Vaughn is. It's his 4th year in the league. I've seen that dude. I have seen enough of him to know what type of running back he is. You still don't know what Sean Tucker is, and you're taking away opportunities from Rachaad White. So, to me, and this isn't a reporting thing or anything. This is just kind of reading the tea leaves. Do they not trust Rachaad White as much, right? Because they're not rotating in these backs. It's these carries could be going to Rachaad White. That pass that Keyshawn Vaughn dropped, Rachaad White probably catches. Rachaad White was pretty good in the passing game today. So I don't really understand it. Matt Diaz with the $5 super chat though says now would be the time to open the playbook, Canales. Also was the game and Baker missed open Mike Evans. We can talk about the play calling. It's like he's trying to fit a square peg into a round hole with the running game. He's going to keep forcing it, I guess. And we'll see how much it doesn't work, but it's not going to.
I saw John Ledyard put out a tweet today that summed it up perfectly. It really seems like Dave Canales wants to try and lean into the biggest weakness of this Buccaneers offense in the hopes that eventually it turns into a strength. And I just do not think the Bucs have the personnel or at this point the offensive line to go out there and try and make it happen. I can say that it does seem like there was more of an effort to produce more of that eye candy for the linebackers when you're running the ball. There was a little bit more pre-snap motion. We did see a little more creativity, it felt like. Keyshawn Vaughn got a couple of carries to the outside, which we've been asking where the outside zone concept stuff is for a while, and we finally saw some of that today, even though it wasn't enough. There was a lot of that pre-snap motion. Baker making checks at the line, something that we did not see last week, and took away an element of predictability in this run game. But again, ultimately it is not enough. Before we take our first call, I do have one more quick question. The Bucs obviously going to have a short week playing a Buffalo team that has been struggling these last couple of weeks, clearly. So they're going to be very much looking for a win on Thursday night. But all of this conversation we just had about the run game, and especially the running backs in that running back room, I'm going to ask you again, and I'm going to ask you after the game on Thursday. Trade deadline in a little under 2 weeks on October 31st. A lot of teams looking to sell some pieces. The Vikings have been named as one. The Colts potentially, even though I think they did have a big win today. I'm not sure how that game ended up playing out. The Broncos also been listed as another team. So the Bucs look at what they have in this running back room. And I know that this is, the season that we have said you wait and see with this roster. You want to see what you have. You want to see what you ultimately have in these players, and you want to get the most out of them, even if it's frustrating and it feels like you're wasting time because you don't have a championship window. But let's be honest. I mean, if the Bucs have any semblance of a run game today, I'm not saying that they win, but maybe, just maybe, we get the yard that we need on 3rd and 1. Maybe, just maybe, they can convert 3 yards in the red zone to potentially end up with 6 instead of settling for 3, which is going to be the difference at the end of the game. Do the Bucs look to maybe try and be buyers at the deadline? I don't think the Bucs are ready to start selling guys off yet, but clearly this running back room needs some help. Are they going to try and address this at all at some point?
By the way, the Colts did lose. The Browns beat them at the last second there, but
Heartbreaker.
I'm still gonna say no, just because I agree they're not in a position to sell. But at the same time, I also don't think they're in a position to buy. They need their draft picks, man. They need to get a new era in here. I'm not saying blow it up, but they need fresh blood. They needed it last year. They got it, some of it. Now they need more of it. And I just think Jason Light values his draft picks so much that I just can't imagine he'd be willing to part with them. And the teams that are going to be selling off pieces, they're not going to be looking for players. They're not going. People are going to be like, "Oh, trade Ryan Neal to one of them." What does a team like the Colts have any use for Ryan Neal? A team like the Broncos, why would they want a Ryan? They're going to be looking for draft picks. So I think that's what you'd be giving up. And I don't think the Buccaneers are in a position of, one, they don't want to, and two, I just don't think they can. So even if the Bucs go out and lose against Buffalo, I don't think the outcome of that game, or even today's game for that matter, I don't think the Bucs would have beaten the Falcons and beaten the Bills. I don't think it would have changed their thought process on this trade deadline. I think they're going to stand pretty pat.
We got our first call of the show. We appreciate you hanging on. It's been a few minutes. From the 626, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
What's up, guys? It's Richard T. over here on the West Coast.
Hey,
what's
Richard.
up, buddy?
Oh, man, guys. This offense is just brutal to watch right now. Look, I get Atlanta has improved. They beefed up in the middle. I am, for one, not expecting the run game to improve by this point. But gosh, guys, 13 points. 13 points in this revamped offense. It's just not good enough. And I like Dave Canales. I think a lot of it does have to fall on his plate. I really feel like right now he's not evolving as an offensive coordinator. He's talking the talk, but he's not walking the walk. They said in the beginning of the season that, if they want to, if they see run defense, they're going to pass. If they see pass defense, they're going to run. And they're losing to that idea, because when they see run defense and they're going to pass, they converge on the pass. And then vice versa. When they see a pass defense, they're going to run, and then the defenses converge on the run. So there needs to be a little bit more creativity, because it's just not working well. And all these offensive line penalties, all these pre-snap penalties that we're seeing, that's coaching, guys. That's coaching.
Yeah.
I mean, do you guys feel the same way, or am I the only one? Am I on crack?
No, you're definitely not the only one.
Isn't evolving.
No, you're definitely not the only one. You're not the only one, and I like that you said He's talking the talk, right? But he's not walking the walk per se. And sort of what I said in the offseason, everybody, singing his praises and expecting this, fantastic offense. And I was like, okay, like I do think it'll be improved, but at the same time, like, you can say all you want, like you can say anything you want. What matters is the actual, the results that are on the field, and the results so far, I wouldn't say all bad. I would say at this point probably a mixed bag. I think, if you were asking a Bucs fan 2 weeks ago when they were sitting at the bye week, they'd say, oh, good, like it's been good. Now I do think it's turned to mixed, and it can turn to bad pretty quickly if they don't right this ship, though. So I do think, like I said, he's trying to fit that square peg into a round hole with the run game. It's not going to work. I don't know why you're forcing it. And, just have to hope that, like I said, you have to hope you're efficient enough on third down and avoid the turnovers, which the Bucs, had 2 turnovers a day. It hurt them, especially one down the red zone. So can't happen. And you just got to hope that, like, these guys start playing better, but also, like, the offensive play calling needs to put them in better positions. Canales needs to be better for sure.
Yeah, Canales has been so good at talking the talk. It's the main reason why I am not more upset with him now. Because let's be honest, if this was year 2 or 3 in his system, and we're seeing the same mistakes and we're seeing the same lack of adjustments week in and week out, we'd be having the same conversation now that we were about Byron Leftwich this time last year. But I do think some of the things we are seeing are just due to him being a first-year play caller. And again, it's obviously got to get better. I'm not saying it is acceptable, but I do think that the line of patience, the slack that we cut him this week, the context of him being a first-year play caller is obviously going to be important. But adjustments are going to have to be made, because if this thing keeps getting worse, people are going to be ready to run him out of town. And I have one more week. Thursday night on a short week, if we come away from that. If we come away from that game and we're asking ourselves yet again, man, what kind of game plan was that? What were they trying to do? Or we look at what they put on film and it was ultimately predictable in a lot of situations. Take away the execution errors, take away the discipline errors. Look at what he is bringing to the game plan week in and week out. And if it's working to a degree, and the only thing holding it back is execution errors, and that's one thing. But, these last couple of weeks, this play calling definitely has been missing some of that magic that it is needed, like they have shown in some of the wins. That creativity that they had against the Saints feels like we have been chasing that kind of momentum on the offensive side of the ball ever since that game happened. So it'll be interesting to see if he bounces back, especially on a short week with a lot of pressure and a Bills team with a lot of pressure to go out there and win. Richard, your final thoughts before we let you go, my friend.
Yeah. Hey, okay. So another thing I've been feeling too is that although the defense has been still pretty good, right? But it hasn't been stellar. Like, I personally feel this Todd Bowles defense, like 2019 was the best defense. And they were just, that defense was given that, a shithole, really, with Jameis throwing 2 picks, per game, putting the defenses in a lot of bad positions, and still held up. Had a lot of defensive touchdowns that season, and it hasn't been that. Even our Super Bowl season, I still feel like it still took somewhat of a step back. I'm now at the point where I feel like offenses are not even afraid of the defense anymore. Because you have a game, this quarterback, Ritter, he's been proven he's not really been good. But he looked pretty good today, considering, like, even though he had 3 fumbles, costly fumbles, which and our team still couldn't even capitalize on. He's a running quarterback, right, who could throw down the field or has a strong arm, may not be that accurate. How come Todd Bowles isn't, like, taking a page out of the Monte Kiffin book of, like, quarterback spying and things like that? What are you guys' thoughts on that?
Richard, we appreciate the question. We'll get to that here in a second, and we'll talk to you soon, buddy. Go Bucs. Thank you for your call. So, talking about, I guess, the lack of aggressiveness, or at least the lack of awareness with these quarterbacks that can burn you with their legs like Desmond Ritter did in a couple of critical situations there. To answer our buddy Richard's question, Evan, your thoughts on the defense today and overall so far into this year?
I mean, you forced 3 turnovers. Some of them were basically, Falcons' fault. Um, I mean, pressure wasn't really much there. A little bit. And then obviously you give up, the Bucs tie it, and then you give up a big catch to Kyle Pitts, and then they kick the field goal. Man, it's a mixed bag for the defense, and just disappointing though, because the defense has played at times this season's played at a very high level, and the defense was one of the things that, while they weren't great last week, they kept them in the game last week and gave them a chance to win. The offense just was dreadful, and now the offense gives the offense was bad, right? The offense was bad today, no question about it. But they tie the game up, and they give the defense a chance to send this one to overtime. Now, I do know that some people in the chat have even mentioned that late down there that the Bucs passed 3 times, and it was 3 incompletions that stopped the clock. Atlanta had all 3 timeouts, and the Bucs could have ran the ball there. And I agree for sure. At least one time they probably could have ran it, but the offense gave the defense a chance to send it to OT, and the defense came up short. And Desmond Ridder has struggled this season at times. He's been good, but he struggled at times. He's now 2-0 against the Bucs in his career as a starter. So he won the Week 17 game or Week 18 game last year, which I understand. The Bucs pulled their starters or whatever at halftime, but still 2-0. And Bijan Robinson, he wasn't feeling well, so he barely got any touches. He got 1 touch, I believe, 7-8 plays, 7-8 snaps, and the Falcons still were able to do whatever they wanted. And it just seems like Tyler Algier was able to find running lanes. They had over 100 rushing yards. So defense again, despite the turnovers, 3 turnovers. They weren't good enough, and the 3 turnovers were all down in Buccaneer territory. So that means the Falcons were getting down there. They just weren't being able to punch the ball in because they were turning the ball over. So the Bucs defense definitely, I think, needs to bounce back, because while the score, you'll look at 16 points and you'll look at 3 turnovers, you'll look at that box score. The defense just wasn't quite good enough today.
Over 140 yards on the ground today for Atlanta, and Bijan Robinson only had 1 carry for 3 yards. So again, stressing the importance of just buckling down in key moments and not allowing, this backup running back group to run all over you the way that Atlanta did this year and also last year, because Tyler Algier has a way of making it happen against Tampa Bay. But I will say, it is going to be pretty hard for me to come onto this podcast and crap all over the Bucs defense today. Because for another week in a row, in my opinion, even though there were some things lacking, I do think they did more than enough to put the Bucs in a position.
They forced 3 turnovers.
They forced 3
turnovers. The offense scored 0 points off those turnovers.
They forced 3 turnovers, and there were so many situations in this game where, like we said, you're scratching your head at not just the offensive penalties from this offense, but the lack of execution, the lack of anything at all when they truly needed it. Let's talk about Antoine Winfield Jr. for a minute while we highlight some of the good things that happened today for the Bucs. This guy is going to be the highest paid safety in the NFL once he finally gets his deal. I don't think there's any way you don't. 2 forced fumbles at the goal line today, one of them paying dividends and ultimately came up huge, as it was a mental mistake from Desmond Ridder, cost him the ball. It's a touchback. Bucs get the ball back. So, again, I think we can talk about the lack of pass rush. I think we can talk about the lack of pressure on Desmond Ridder, and obviously the lack of run defense, because the Falcons just ran away with it. And ultimately in the second half of that game is where they took control. That's what they wanted to do. But still, I just come away feeling empty-handed from this offense. Like that's how I feel more than anything. I'm more upset with the offense and the fact that they couldn't do a damn thing than I am with the defense. And again, you are counting on those critical plays, especially at the end of the game. Like you cannot give up a 40-plus yard completion to a tight end of all players. That can't happen. And with a defense as good as we have talked about all year, when your team trusts you to go win the game, you got to go out there and win the game, or at least take it to overtime. You have to shut them down. You cannot allow them to just convert as easily as they did. And unfortunately, whenever an opposing offense has entered crunch time against the Bucs this year, they seemingly get all the conversions they need to. But again, I still cannot sit here and say beyond a shadow of a doubt, the defense lost the game today, because they just didn't. They didn't. I know that at the end of the game we can say that they did, but I just don't think it's fair to say that. I don't.
No, I don't think they lost the game. That being said, like, they could be a little bit better. I know it's nitpicking, but at the same time, those 3 turnovers, like I said, Atlanta was down there, so like Atlanta was moving the ball. Basically, the Ritter, I mean, just a heads up play by Antoine Winfield. Fantastic again today. And you got to believe, like you said, I think, when he signs that deal, has a pretty good shot of being the highest paid safety, until the next stud comes along and tops it. Like, the next contract will always be the one that tops it, right? It's always going to top it. So I do think, that if the timing's right, that I think he could become the NFL's highest paid safety. But, the defense, to me, again, like you said, they weren't the reason they lost. They were not the reason, and there's not one reason. There's not one singular reason why they lost. There's multiple. You don't just, very rarely in the NFL do you come away from a game and say, "Yep, there is one reason they lost, and it is this." No, there's a bunch of reasons. So at the same time, though, I mean, the Falcons, they're starting on their own 25. Like, they had 3 timeouts, but they had under a minute. You can't let them get in field goal range. You can't let them get in field goal range there with under a minute. Send this game to overtime. If the Bucs receive the ball, maybe the Falcons don't even touch the ball again. In that scenario, you can't let the Falcons get in the field goal range there. But again, like I said, they were moving the ball fine all day on the Bucs defense, and I thought the Bucs defense was okay. Not their best, not their worst. Like, 3 turnovers and the offense couldn't score. Like, at the end of the day, the offense scored 13 points. The offense had a chance to take the lead or tie it earlier, and they threw a pick. So, and then even like the offense went for it on 4th down to start the game. The Bucs defense was backed up at the 50-yard line, And then obviously the Bucs, Devin Tompkins has the fumble that the Falcons immediately have into Falcons territory or Bucs territory. So I don't think the defense is solely to blame. I do think they should share part of the blame because, again, I don't remember how many seconds, and I'm actually going to be looking this up right now. I don't remember how many seconds were on the clock when Atlanta got the ball back. But let's see here. 40 looks like there was 45 seconds. 45. I understand they got 3 timeouts, but 45 seconds. You're starting on your own 25. That can't result in a game-winning field goal to me. Not against an offense that's not great. Like, that's Patrick Mahomes. That's one thing. If it's Joe Burrow or even Josh Allen, that's one thing. But the Desmond Ridder and the Falcons, you can't let that up. So to me, I'm not going to blame the defense solely, right? I'm not, because it's honestly not even partially their fault, but I have a hard time letting them off the hook for this, specifically because of how the game ended.
Well, in talking about some of the big plays on the day against this Buccaneers defense, it wouldn't be a reunion in Raymond James Stadium unless we saw Scotty Miller with the biggest offensive play of the year for the Atlanta Falcons as well. So he came up and made a big play. But the total stats on the day: 400 total yards of offense for the Atlanta Falcons, 244 of those through the air, 156 rushing yards against this Buccaneers defense. And we talked about the importance of 3rd down for both of these teams headed into this game with Will McFadden earlier this week on the game preview. Atlanta today on 3rd down, their offense was 8 for 14. The Buccaneers, while they did get better, they were not the better team on 3rd down. They were only 6 for 12 as far as 3rd down efficiency goes. So the Falcons win the battle on 3rd down as well. Just more of those critical conversions paying dividend. And believe it or not, the time of possession, Tampa Bay was on top. But you're not going to guess what the split was. 30 minutes and 1 second for the Bucs, 29 minutes and 59 seconds for Atlanta. So literally as close to even as it can possibly get.
The Bucs held the ball for 2 more seconds.
Yeah, it certainly felt like Atlanta held the ball for the majority of the game today, but the Bucs actually come out on top with time of possession. But that just goes to show how critical those 3rd down conversions were in the end of this one.
No, for sure. And we talked about 3rd downs last week, against Detroit. 3rd downs were a big reason why the Bucs struggled to win that game. Why they lost against Detroit, allowing the third and longs and not getting the third down conversions when they needed it. And then the Bucs offense the Bucs defense was better today in both areas on third down, I think, but again, not good enough, just simply not good enough. And obviously the Bucs had a shot to take the lead there with a minute left and threw an incomplete pass on third down. So, well, actually, Baker got sacked on third down, which I didn't have too big of an issue with him taking the sack. I mean, if Chase McLaughlin missed this as a field goal, I think you're having a different conversation because you pushed him back 8-9 yards. But I was fine with it. You don't want a stupid mistake there. He just had the turnover the previous drive. I wasn't too mad at that, but it's. Again, and some people are saying, "Oh, the defense was gassed." Look, okay, the defense was gassed. They had the whole 2-minute warning, and the offense had the ball. At some point, 45 seconds, if you're a good defense, that game goes in overtime. You don't let that game go into overtime. So or you let that game go in overtime. Doesn't end with Younghoe Koo kicking as time expires. It can't. Not with 45 seconds. I don't care if there's 3 timeouts. Ryan Neal just continues to be a brutal player for the Bucs. And I mean, that wasn't all. It's not like he was covering Kyle Pitts one-on-one. It was more like a zone. But Neal just took a terrible angle where he could have tackled him immediately, and it would have been a big gain. But Kyle Pitts wouldn't have been in field goal range right away. They would have needed a little bit more.
I mean, I don't want to sit here and say could have been, should have been, would have been, but could have been a big hit. It's one of those things where if you come down at just the right time, if Kyle Pitts isn't ready, he could fumble the football, ends up being a huge takeaway in the final minute of the game. It's neither here nor there because, again, it didn't happen. Kyle Pitts made the play. Ryan Neal took a bad angle, gave up another 15 yards on the reception before ultimately bringing the play to an end. But yeah, he has just been god-awful. I thought maybe he would get a break this week, but it does not seem to be the case.
Yeah. And I thought Levante David was great today. Antoine Winfield, obviously really good. But, again, pass rush didn't really show up much. They had the 1 sack at the end of the half, which resulted in the fumble, which was big. Obviously, to get, called Atlanta no points there. Keep the score tied at half. But again, pass rush not really showing you what you need. I thought Shaq Barrett had a much better day today, which we talked about that. I talked about it on Mr. Bucs Nation video. We talked about that on the preview pod. So I thought Shaq Barrett had a better day. At the same time, though, this pass rush just isn't doing enough. Richard asks, is Ryan Neal on the floor level of Chris Conte? I wouldn't say that because here's the thing. I think part of that is coaching as well. I mentioned that tweet that I believe Josh Capo put out last week about how many snaps Ryan Neal played in the box versus how many he played in coverage last year in Seattle. And then this year versus with Tampa, it's flipped. So, I don't think the coaching stats put him in the best spot possible to be successful, which kind of sucks. But at the same time, dude, you're out there, go make a play. You're out there for a reason. All right, you can only blame coaching. Oh, I'm not being put in the right positions. And he's not saying that, but that's what I'm seeing. But at the same time, you're out there, make the play. So, and he just, he hasn't been able to do it. So I don't know if, they only signed to a 1-year deal. Like you said, I think last week it was one of the more exciting free agent additions that they had because they didn't have many. So it'd be disappointing to see him bench, but he signed a 1-year deal for not a lot of money. So the Bucs don't really have any connection to him, right? They don't really have any ties to him. It's not a multi-year deal. There isn't any, guaranteed money or anything like that to where if they can bench him, they can easily bench him. And I think if he continues to struggle, they might, you might have to consider that because D. Delaney in coverage might be a little bit of a better fit for what they're asking their safeties to do here. I mean, no, I don't know. They're running out of answers. I'm not in that coach's room. I'm not in that film room, but just wish they would deploy him a little bit different than they have.
Yeah, I think in terms of free agent recruits for the Bucs, Ryan Neal obviously in the hot seat, and I think Matt Filer in that same conversation as well.
Matt Filer, you're seeing a reason, and this is why we were oh, he's a solid veteran. When they signed him, okay, a solid veteran. And I even said, and it wasn't just me, but I even said There's a reason this dude was available for the veteran minimum and nobody wanted him. Like, he's not good. Like, he's not very good. He used to be pretty good, but like, he's not very good anymore. So like, they need a left guard, like, for the future. Like, it's not going to happen this season, obviously, but like, they need a long-term answer at left guard.
Yeah, I think the interior offensive line, there's going to be a lot of attention headed to that position group after this season, I believe. I don't think Hainsey's going to be your starting center next year if everything goes according to plan, because, just another week in a row where he looks like a guy who should be playing guard. He doesn't look natural playing center. And going back to the conversation about the run game, you don't get any push at all from the interior of that offensive line. You're just not seeing it. You don't see it from Hainsey. You don't see it from Malk most of the time, and you definitely do not see it from Filer because he's out there getting his ass beat every other play. So there is one.
Also,
real
ahead. Quick, I thought Gedeke was pretty bad today too. Not a great Lou Gedeke day. After we've been singing his praises now, and not the best Lou Gedeke day. So just wanted to point that out. And really quick, Lawrence asked, so who can you put in, Nick Leverett or Stanley? I would have met Nick Leverett. If you're talking about replacing Filer, if you're talking about replacing Hainsey, that gets a little more complicated because Nick Leverett, I think, played a little bit at center in the preseason. It did not go very well. So I think Hainsey, unless there's an injury, I think Hainsey's there to stay at center. But as far as Filer and guard goes, it wouldn't shock me if at some point this season you give Nick Leverett a look. But at the same time, there's a reason he hasn't been able to hold that position. Lou Gedeke struggled last year, was injured and then benched. Nick Leverett came in, and the Bucs still went out and signed Matt Filer in the offseason and are starting him instead of Nick Leverett. So there must be a reason for that. So I don't know. I don't know if there is a solid answer on the offensive line in that interior, but and I see a lot of people talking about the Baker thing. We'll end the show with that. We're not quite there yet, but we will end the show talking about what most people want us to talk about, I promise.
Before we get to that, I did have one guy I wanted to highlight. If there's one more player that I talk good about on this Bucs defense today, it's not going to be Antoine Winfield Jr. It's not going to be Levante David. It's going to be the rookie Kalijah Kancey. I think he was robbed of the co-sack at the end of that first half, coming up big with Shaq Barrett there and able to make the play, but his presence is palpable. You notice when he is out there. I know that for a couple of weeks in a row, we have talked about this pass rush leaving us feeling underwhelmed, but I do think eventually it's going to start to come together a little bit more the more that we see Kalijah Kancey on the field. The guy is going to be a problem. He looks like a menace. He's winning a considerable amount of reps. I like a lot of what I have seen from the young number 94 so far.
Yeah, no, for sure. You can see the explosiveness and you can see the potential and the ceiling that he has. Just all about staying healthy and putting it together. It's going to take time. It is going to take time. It's only really a second start. So, but it's important that you see it, right? Like, it's not like you're looking at him and you're like, man, like, don't really see any juice, like don't see any pop, don't see any nothing, like don't see any get off, his first step and this and that. He's not getting off blocks quick enough, or you see all those things and you can recognize them. And I think that's important right now. So while he may not be getting the stats, I think what shows up on the film is a bit more important right now for a guy like Kalijah Kancey, especially when he misses the entire preseason and he misses the entire training camp. Like, that's valuable reps and time that he just hasn't gotten. So he's sort of playing catch up to all of that. And I do think that he has been pretty good for the Bucs, and it is a positive sign for the future because he's a big piece of their defensive future. Like, he really is. Vita Vea is not going to be here forever. Like, obviously he's going to be here for a little bit longer, but he's not going to be here 10 years from now like Kalijah Kancey might. So, like, it's a big deal for that defensive line and for like I said, for the future and the present, because they need him right now to be able to make plays. And he has done that, and you just hope that he can keep it going consistently here.
Anytime the Bucs lose, it's going to be $1 million question, and anytime the Bucs lose partially because of the quarterback play, it's going to be even more of a hot button question. But the Bucs headed into a short week, Thursday Night Football coming up on the road against a floundering Buffalo Bills team. Yeah. I have to assume Baker Mayfield is going to be their starter headed into that game. You have to assume that Baker Mayfield is going to be their starter headed into that game. But if Thursday Night Football comes around,
yeah, I can shut that down right now. They're not switching quarterbacks on a short week.
Yeah, they're definitely not. They're definitely not going to switch quarterbacks in a short week. I was saying that without really saying it. So both of us assuming that Baker is going to be your starter, which he more than likely will. But if Baker Mayfield goes out there and he plays another game like he did today, and that's important. I think the context of the game that he played today is important. Let's say it's a late game chance for the Bucs to try and win, and he throws a late game interception. Is he going to be your starting quarterback when the Bucs come back from their break?
Yes. Figured we'd have this conversation at some point this season, right? I would say probably still. But the heat would be on, and it would be basically, so after this Buffalo game coming up, they have Houston in Houston, and Houston played some good ball. C.J. Stroud has looked like easily the best rookie quarterback. Looks like a legit dude. Houston's defense, they got Will Anderson flying around there. D'Amico Ryans just has them guys pumped up. And basically, I think it would come down to that. Now, they're losing to Buffalo and the offense sputtering again. Be 3 straight losses, 3 straight where the offense is really, really struggling. Yes, it's not good. At the same time, they would only be 3-4. It wouldn't be like they're 2-5 or 1-6. Because here's the thing to me, and this is just, my sort of thought process, and I'm sure if there are Gator fans in here listening, which I'm sure there are, they'll probably disagree with me, but to me, when you decide to put Kyle Trask in, right, when you decide to make him your starter, one, there's no going back. There is no going back to Baker Mayfield because that doesn't do anybody any good, right? It's not, Kyle Trask is going to be our starter, and then he plays like crap for 2 weeks, and you're like, no, we got to put Baker back in. No, once you make that move, it's got to stay that way. And 2, to me, putting Trask in would signal that you're giving up on the season, that like this season's pretty much a wash, you're moving on, right? Because to me, like, you're benching the guy who beat the guy in training camp. Like, you're putting that guy in who got beat out by the guy that you're benching. So to me, what does that show? How much faith does that show in Kyle Trask? Or is it, more of a, to me, it'd be more of an indictment on Mayfield and not like, let's give Trask a shot. So I don't think we're there yet. I think I do think that you're getting there. You're starting to see some cracks in the foundation. You're starting to maybe feel a little bit of heat, right? Maybe that fire's starting to just creep up a little bit, may turn on just a little bit. For Baker Mayfield, but I do think, if they lose against Buffalo, which Buffalo lost today, Buffalo's lost 2 out of the last 3 and really could be and should be maybe 3 straight, honestly.
They lost barely to Tyrod Taylor.
Tyrod Taylor and the Giants at home. Like, in Buffalo, like, you can't. Like, that can't come down to that play. And really, like, the refs bailed the Bills out. So the Bills have not played good football. So I think you go out there and the offense struggles again. You lose that game. I think it comes down to that Houston game. And if they fail in that Houston game and lose that one, go to 3-5, and the offense struggles again, that's 4 straight losses. That's 4 straight games where the offense has struggled. To me, then you have to make a switch. And I think the Bucs would at that point. So I don't think it's there yet, but I do think we're finally, for the first time all season, and I saw there were some people last week that were calling for it, and we weren't, we weren't there. We were like, it's not really to that point yet. But if they lose against Atlanta, for the first time all season, I think there is legit heat on Baker Mayfield's status as the Bucs starting quarterback. I do think it is possible. Maybe not likely. It's not going to happen right now, but it is starting to get to that point, and we'll see what happens.
One more call to wrap up this week's post-game show. You are on the Cane and Fire podcast. Thanks for holding. Where are you calling from? What's your name?
Hey, Corey from Nashville.
Corey, what's up, man?
Corey?
Hey, guys. Before the season started, I think it was a week before Baker was named the starter, I've tweeted that the things that scare me about this, I really like this team. I love what we did in the draft. I love what we did at the time in free agency, even with Ryan Neal at the time, just because of where he was ranked with PFF, which is just a load of garbage. because he's like the worst safety in the league. I don't know how he was the best last year. If he just is a medium safety, we'll be fine on the back end. But anyway, I digress. And I said the head coach and the quarterback are the only things that concern me about this team. And I think it just has reared its ugly head the last 2 weeks. Today, more specifically, coaching. Yeah, Baker threw that interception late in that game. It was a terrible decision. But, I mean, let's be honest. If we're asking Baker to throw the ball 44 times, he's going to make at least 1 to 2 bad decisions. That's actually any quarterback. It's just going to happen. Like, you're not going to make 44 great decisions throwing the football. I don't care who you are. Sometimes you might get a little greedy, or you might see something that you thought you saw. And if it happens on one rep, unfortunately, it was a bad rep. And, I mean, he threw the ball 40-plus times today. And ironically enough, we get to the red zone late in the game. We didn't get there by passing the ball. We got there because he had a 31-yard scramble, and we had a penalty. You know what I mean? So why would we come out and throw the ball 3 straight times? That's what I mean by the ineptitude at coaching. I play Madden. I play Madden competitively. And I'm really good. And you know why I'm really good? Because I'm a really good coach. I know when to call my timeouts. I know how to use them. I know when to go for it on 4th down. I know if I got an opportunity, let me see, I'm on the 8-yard line. I need 8 yards for pay dirt, but they got 3 timeouts and it's over a minute and a half left. I'm going to run the ball the first 2 plays. And then on 3rd down, I'm going to pass the ball. However, if I don't have a clear-cut completion that's going to make them use the other timeout, what I'm going to do is not get it incomplete, and I'm not going to throw it away. I'll take a cover sack or I'll fall down. Now they out of timeouts. We kick the field goals, like 20 seconds left in the game, 30 seconds left with no timeouts. Now we tackle OT. You at home, let's go get the win. I don't understand why our offense looks like it has to be controlled by rocket science.
Well, Corey,
but anyway, I want you guys to respond on some of the things that I'm saying.
No, you're good, Corey. I appreciate you calling in, my friend. I do have one honest question for you if you are still there. When you look at this offense and you bring up, 3 straight pass attempts at the end of the game that they get absolutely nothing out of, I agree that it is not a great situation, but what kind of faith has this run game given you that if you were to put them in a situation to pick up even just 1 yard, on the 3rd and 1 that we needed earlier in the game, what kind of faith have they given you that they can even convert on a 3rd and 1, let alone a game-winning drive where you've got, less than 4 minutes left to go?
I'm going to be frank. Because of the time and the power that the other team has to control, like I said, I am going to call the runs. I'm calling the runs to play the clock, right? If we score, great. We need 8 yards. Maybe they even let us fall in the end zone and let us score so we don't use their timeout. You just never know in this scenario, but I get what you're saying because we did have some holding calls on 1st down runs. We had some pre-snap penalties on 1st down runs. So from that perspective, I respect what you're saying, of course. But at the end of the day, you have to play football. I'm a Miami Hurricane fan. Kneel the damn ball. Just play football.
Just control the ball.
You don't have to be. You don't have to be spectacular every single thing. Like Devin Tompkins fumbled. Why? We lost that rep. We lost that when we're playing against other professionals. We lost that rep. Cool. But before I go, I got to give shout out to Antoine Winfield Jr. and Levante David. Clearly the only two, not counting Vita because he's having a great year. Kalijah's making splash plays. But I just got to talk about them two exclusively because they seem to be the only competent players on our defense.
Yeah.
And it's not even close. Devin White, we're 6 games in, bro. I don't see it. No, sir. Unless you're going to take a major discount to come back so we can keep Levante, bye. I'm ready to see Savasier Dennis get some of his snaps. I just think he's a more fluid athlete at this point. Devin White is so stiff, and he says he runs a 4.4, but I never see it. I haven't seen it since the Saints playoff game. I just haven't seen his athleticism since the Saints playoff game. I haven't seen it, and it's very distressing. But I'm sorry. I know you guys are ready to go. Thanks for taking my call.
No, you're good, Corey.
Well, we appreciate it.
Yeah, we appreciate you calling in as always. The hot takes as ever from our boy Corey to wrap up the show. And I will say, highlighting Devin White, had that crucial mistake in coverage against Tyler Allgeier, and that cost the Bucs 35, 40 plus yards. I think it was 46 total yards.
It was 47. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, what are you like?
Well,
Even
what is
if
he doing?
even if Antoine Winfield can't chase down Ritter, let Ritter get the first down and get 10 yards rather than give up 47. Like, just you were with him the whole way. Why do you have to bite like that? Like, that was a game changer.
I think he expected someone else to make that play for him. I think he expected someone to be there behind him to make that play, and they just weren't. And obviously, when you blow your position in his own coverage, you can see some fatal mistakes like that occur. But thank you again to Corey and Richard for calling in. Ladies and gentlemen, that's just about going to do it for this week's post-game show, I guess. Game review edition of the Cannon Fire podcast. A frustrating game from top to bottom. I mean, the first half, it was exciting. I got to say, it kept me on the edge of my seat for a little while. Seemed like it was going to be productive for both offenses, but just a plethora of mistakes and some flag-happy referees lead to what we saw today. A sloppy performance, a pathetic performance, and I think, overall, I know the Bucs have been dominated in other games, but I think considering how good the Falcons are, the team that the Bucs played today, probably their worst performance of the season, I think personally.
Well, and also you got to think this game was just massive. Like, we talked about it. Like, this was a must-win game. Like, they had to have this game, man. And they just came up short. They just didn't do it. So, yeah, really disappointing. Next time we talk to you guys will actually be the game preview for the Bills. It's going to come up quick, but that's what happens when you play on Thursday. So it will be the game preview probably on Tuesday for the Bills game. But, just have to keep an eye on the injury reports. Hopefully, I mean, it does seem like most people are healthy. Kayvon Merriweather, I think, exited the game. Matt Filer got a little banged up, but I think for the most part, everybody's healthy. So have to wait and see. Like we talked about, the Bills are struggling a little bit, and now you're in a spot where now you're in another must-win game, and this one's probably going to be tougher than the one you just played. So, because Baker, Mayfield, this is like you mentioned earlier. You throw that pick again, throw a pick against the Bills, you're probably not getting that football back. So, the Bills while the Bills have struggled, they're a better football team than the Atlanta Falcons, and it's a road game on a short week. Not a recipe for success. So hopefully the Buccaneers can bounce back, but we'll have to wait and see. And if they don't, it'll be a long 10 days before they play again. I think there's going to be a lot of discussion until they play again, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, a short week for the Bucs, and then another mini bye week, if you will, with that 10-day break before they end up playing again. We'll keep an eye on the injury report and keep you guys updated throughout the week on who is healthy and who is not as the Bucs get ready for a short week on prime time. Make sure you follow our show on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those are Cannon Fire Podcast. Best place to go for updates on the show and, of course, Buccaneer news as it happens. Speaking of Bucs news as it happens, you can follow my co-host Evan on Instagram at Bucs_daily. You can also find him on Twitter at EvanNFL and check out his written work at BucsNation.com. What have you got this week?
Yeah, this is going to be a busy one because I was, like I said, with a short week. So I think I'm going to have the post-game reactions tomorrow. Probably have the X Factor or Q&A done Tuesday or Wednesday. So I got 3 things coming out before Thursday. So gonna be a busy week for me here.
Absolutely. Last but not least, you can find myself on Instagram and Twitter at Rhettakus, RHETTAKUS. If you follow me, I will follow you back. Subscribe to our channel here on YouTube for more great Tampa Bay Buccaneers content. Be on the lookout for some more guest spots popping up as we try and get some more of our friends from the other NFC South teams and any other team around the NFL that the Bucs play this year involved on the show, and should have some good stuff for you guys coming up there. We will talk to you later on this week for the game preview edition of the Cannon Fire Podcast as the Bucs get ready to play the Bills Thursday night to kick off Week 8 of the 2023 NFL season. We approach the halfway point, and things are getting exciting. Even though it was a tough loss, there's still plenty of football left on the season, and the Bucs going to be looking to bounce back. I'm your host, Rhett Matthew, signing off from my co-host, Evan Wanish. We'll talk to you in the next one. Until then, and as always, thank you again for hanging out with us live, and to everybody who called in. We'll talk to you in the next one. Go Bucs.